Hello everybody, this is Mateti. I have total 12 years of IT experience. I have been working on .NET, SharePoint, MVC and SQL Server, and previously I used to work on VB 6.0 Classic ASP. So overall I was into Microsoft technologies and my major contribution towards .NET. And as a trainer I started my career 8 years back. I can teach .NET, SharePoint, MVC and SQL Server. Today I'm going to discuss the .NET basic .NET course. So it's a demo number 1 for .NET basic .NET course. Okay. So we will discuss course content. This is a course content for .NET basic. So it has different sections in it. The purpose of this course is like any student who does not have any .NET experience or who has some basic level of understanding in .NET, he can attend this course. Okay. In the first section we will cover the basics of the .NET, like what is .NET and how .NET was built, why .NET, and when we can use .NET. It's a bit like the history of the .NET and various basic components of the .NET. Then we will discuss the architecture of the .NET, how .NET is different from Java. We'll compare the .NET architecture with Java components and how it got built and how it works at architectural level. Then we will discuss .NET framework and CLR and memory management in .NET, how memory will be managed in .NET applications. Okay, and we will discuss the new features in .NET. Then we will move on to the ASP.NET basics, how ASP.NET file architecture has been created, like when you work with any ASP.NET application, how the file architecture was designed, in which file we will write which kind of code, what file is designed for what file is converted into like which file, like when we create a ASP.NET ASPX page, finally when you are rendering that page, that will be converted into HTML. So we will discuss about file architecture in .NET. You will see some new files and extensions. Then .NET controls and how to configure those controls. We have different .NET controls, server-side controls, database controls, and validation controls. We will see all these controls one by one, and we will see how to configure them and how to develop them. And the events for the controls, like one of the advantage of using .NET is for each and every control you will have some events, and how to configure those events and how to use those events. And the page lifecycle of a event, page lifecycle of .NET, like the ASP.NET page, ASPX will have some page lifecycle. We have different events in that page lifecycle. What is the purpose of each and every event, page lifecycle event, we will discuss in this page lifecycle section. Then HTTP modulars and handlers we will discuss thoroughly. Then ADO.NET, active data object.NET. This is bit important topic because every application, whether it is .NET application, Java application, PHP application, it will interact with the database. So here in ADO.NET section we will thoroughly discuss the database connectivity, how your ASP.NET application will or any .NET application will be connected to your database, and we will see some database basics also, like how to create tables, how to create referential integrity between the tables, and how to create stored procedures functions, and how to write some simple queries. Then we will see what are the .NET controls which supports database connectivity, and API classes, .NET basic classes, .NET base class library classes which will be used to connect to your database. Okay, and then we will move on to some populating controls, like we have powerful controls to display the data in huge number, like grid view, and repeater control will be used to display large amount of data on your page. Okay, and the events for the grid view, and other database related controls. And for grid view, like paging, sorting, and other options are there. We will see thoroughly each and every option. Then ASP.NET. Introduction to ASP.NET validation controls. How to validate a page. Page validation, ASP.NET page validation can happen at different levels. Client side, server side. In client side, we have ASP.NET validation controls, and we have JavaScript. We will discuss validation controls, and we will discuss directives in ASP.NET, and then user controls and master pages. User controls and master pages will be used to, those are reusable controls, and by using these controls you can your redundant work will be reduced. Then session management and state management. For web applications, session and state management is an important topic, and it will be handy in various levels. So different between server side and client side state management we can maintain the state at server side as well as client side. So here session, application, profile are server side state management techniques. Cookies, query string, view state, control states are at client side state management techniques. Then authorization and authentication. How ASP.NET handles authorization and authentication. Configuration management. We have web.config where we can use or configure different types of information, and that can be used in applications like connection strings, like some server URLs. Security. Login and membership controls we'll discuss in this security section. How you can provide security to your website. Only you can allow the authorized members, you can restrict the unauthorized members. So everything, all the security concepts will be discussed in this security topic. Then XML section. So here in web applications, XML will play the major role. XML files can be used to store configuration information, as I mentioned in the configuration management techniques. Web.config is a XML file, and also XML will play a major role in sharing data between your web applications. So in any scenario, XML will be a important component in web applications. So here in this topic we will discuss how to write XML files, what are the advantages of using XML files, and how to read XML files, and how you will use these XML files in your real-time applications. Then JavaScript. Here we will discuss thoroughly how JavaScript will be used to validate your page. We will write some JavaScript method which will validate your page. This is the alternate solution for using validation controls, and also we will see some jQuery functions and JSON. Then navigation controls. Every web application or any kind of application needs some navigation where user can select different types of menu items or pages. So .NET is supporting this navigation activity by using some default controls like menu control, tree view control, list view control, and hyperlinks. In this section we will see how to use these controls and how to configure these controls. And sending mails using ASP.NET. You can write some code which will generate email and it will send it to your inbox. So here we will see how to configure email in your application and how to send the emails. Web services. Web services in web applications, like web services play major role when we are dealing with multilingual applications, and also web services will improve the performance of your application to retrieve the data and to submit the data. So here we will see what is web service and how to configure a web service, how to write a web service and deploy a web service, and also how to consume a web service. Then we'll move on to the code behind class, which is nothing but either C# or VB.NET class. And also in order to discuss this C#.NET and VB.NET class, we will use console applications and data types, loops and conditions. Then object oriented. In the 15 section we will discuss object oriented techniques. How object oriented programming methodology is different from procedural based languages, what are the advantages of using object oriented languages, and what are the building blocks of your object oriented programming methodology, like class, object, encapsulation, abstraction, construction, inheritance, overloading, dynamic binding and interfaces, abstract methods, static classes and instance members. So we will discuss thoroughly. And exception handling. Exception handling is critical to every application. How to handle the exceptions and how to define user-defined error messages or exception messages or any custom exceptions. We will discuss in this exception handling section. Then difference between string and string builder class. And when we move on to the next topics, these are the latest topics and which will be used to handle large amount of data. Collections and generics, collections basics, types of collections and comparison between the collections, like list, we have array list, dictionary object, hash table. We will discuss all those objects thoroughly. These objects will be used to deal large amount of data. And the generics, functions and delegates. Then advanced concepts of your framework. Currently this will replace the 5.5. So introduction to WCF, introduction to MVC, introduction to MVVM, anonymous methods thoroughly we will discuss, extension methods we will discuss thoroughly, lambda expressions we will discuss in detail, MSMQ, Microsoft message queue. Then we will move on to the Windows services, where we will use Windows services to replace automated activities like sending automated emails, sending automated messages. So Windows services will be very handy in those scenarios. So we'll see how to configure Windows services and how to deploy a Windows service. And debugging Windows service is a typical task. So it's not straightforward. We cannot debug Windows services as we can debug web applications. So there is a specific process to debug your Windows services. And then introduction to Windows applications, how Windows applications are different from web applications, okay, and how the controls are in this Windows applications. Then we will see logging and tracing of .NET applications. So this is the whole course content, okay. So the course is targeted for any new developer or any new student who does not have any software knowledge, or he can be from mechanical background, okay. And the course duration was 30 to 45 days, where we will spend 45 to 1.5 hours on daily basis. What we will do in the course, we'll take one topic, we'll discuss thoroughly on the topic. Then we will see one classroom demo where I can show some piece of code. Suppose if we are discussing session, I can show some classroom demo where we will use session, how to declare the session and how to use the session in different pages. Then I will cover interview point of questions, interview point of topics, and real-time implementation. How our classroom demo is different and how it can be used in real time. You will discuss here. And assignments. After completing every session, I will provide some assignments where you can work on those assignments and come back with your questions. And some R&D topics. Okay, I will start with .NET definition. .NET is not a programming language or it's not a technology. It's a platform or a framework which consists of different technologies and different programming languages. So .NET, the technologies it contains is ASP.NET, HTML, JavaScript, and the programming languages are C# and VB.NET. For what you can use the .NET? You can use .NET for design, develop, debug, and deploy your application. Design is nothing but the UI, user interface. How to define your user interface, how the application look and feel, everything comes under your user interface design. So you can design your applications by using .NET. You can write the code, that is called development, and you can debug the code. Debugging is nothing but analyzing line by line code when you are developing. And deployment is nothing but it's ready for use. So generating exe for Windows applications and deploying web applications into server. So the whole of the activities you can do with .NET of different kinds of applications like Windows applications, web applications, service-oriented applications, mobile applications, and control applications. So .NET is a platform or a framework which consists of different technologies and programming languages. You can use .NET to design, develop, debug, and deployment of the application of different kinds of applications: Windows applications, web applications, service-oriented applications, mobile applications, and console applications. So what was there prior to .NET? We all know .NET is a Microsoft technology. So from the same Microsoft, we have two major technologies before to .NET, VB and Classic ASP. And these are very powerful and successful technologies at that time. So generally when we have successful and powerful technologies, instead of abandoning them, we will try to upgrade them. But Microsoft abandoned these two technologies before introducing .NET because these two have some limitations. If you see VB, it can be used to develop only Windows applications. No web development is possible by using VB. Here VB means VB 6.0, classic VB, and no strong framework to build bigger applications. These are the limitations for VB. And if you see Classic ASP, when you are using Classic ASP, that means you are developing web applications. Either you have to use VB script or JavaScript. There is no programming language support. So when you are going for scripting languages, you will have some limitations when you are writing the code, and no programming language supports. Only client-side controls. All HTML controls you have to use. No server-side control concept was there. And debugging ASP applications is much difficult. I also worked on ASP. That's why I know when you want to debug your ASP applications, you have to write response.write where you want to see the object. So in order to cover these limitations, they need a strong product. And .NET system requirements. You can install on Windows XP, Vista, Windows 7, 8, 10, and all Windows Server applications like server operating systems. And RAM should be minimum 512, but when the Visual Studio is getting increased, like for Visual Studio 2012, 2013, and 2015, you need 4 GB RAM. Even 512 RAM will support, but this will slow the process. And disk space can be 4.5 GB. and processor minimum 1 gigahertz. And frameworks. So till now the .NET frameworks were 1.1, the initial version was 1.1, 2.0, 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, 4.5 and currently 5.0. And these are the Visual Studio versions 2003, 2005, 2008, 2010, 2012, 13 and 15. I can say if you install 2012 that's fine, because there are no changes between not much changes between 2012, 2013 and 2015. But if you see 2010 and 2012, there are a lot of changes. So I can say you can install the latest minimum version was 2012. Okay, and when you are installing Visual Studio, again you no need to install the framework. It will install the default supported framework when you install Visual Studio. So now, as I mentioned, Microsoft was looking for a product which will cover VB and ASP limitations. Okay, and in order to get those limitations covered, and these are the .NET advantages. Rapid application development. When you are using .NET, you can develop applications in a quick manner when you are comparing with Java. Let us assume you are developing one application in Java, so it might take 1 year to 1.5 years, but in .NET you can complete the same project in 6 to 8 months. So when you are comparing this with any other technology or any other languages, .NET is very quick manner. And language interoperability. .NET supports almost more than 32 languages. We have C#, VB.NET, Pascal.NET class, COBOL.NET. So .NET has more than 32 languages. So here language interoperability is nothing but the code written in one language can be used in other languages, other .NET languages. Suppose I developed a piece of code in C#.NET. That code can be used in VB.NET applications. And not only VB.NET applications, all the other .NET applications can use the C#.NET code. So in bigger organizations, what will happen when you have some project developed in one language that can be used in other projects, irrespective whether they are in the same language or in different language. And MS support compatibility with other Microsoft product. Earlier, .NET developer means he can develop only .NET applications or he can work on only .NET projects. Now a .NET developer can work on Microsoft products, he can work on CRM Dynamics, he can work on Office 365 and cloud computing applications. Because all these languages or technologies inbuilt, they are using .NET. So now as a developer, as a .NET developer, your scope got increased. You can migrate it into any other technologies easily. And strong base class library. So for the students who doesn't know .NET, I'll give some example. Like in C, C++, we have two header files like stdio.h and conio.h. The purpose of using these two header files, whenever you want to use cout and cin functionalities, you have to use these header files. So the cout and cin functionalities, the code has been written in these two header files so that you don't need to write from the beginning. So here your redundant work will be reduced. So in a similar way, we have a strong base class library in .NET. We have almost 1 lakh plus classes in current version of the .NET. So these are predefined classes. So when you want some functionality, you can use these classes, you can create object of these classes and assign some properties and call the methods. That's it. So when the count in the base class library got increased, that means as a developer, your work will be reduced. And powerful IDE. I can say .NET contains a powerful IDE in the world. Like the Visual Studio, which we are using for developing .NET applications. It will do everything. When you are working on .NET applications, you don't need to go for the other tools. The design, development, debugging, deployment, everything, all the activities will be doing by your Visual Studio. So this is not only editor, so it's a powerful development environment, IDE, integrated development environment. So here .NET Framework Architecture. So in order to deploy your applications, in order to execute your applications, you need .NET Framework. Your applications will communicate with your operating system, and your applications will communicate with your framework, and your framework will communicate with your operating system. So here framework will be the middleware or the mediator between your applications and your operating system. And framework is the heart of your .NET applications because it contains different components. If you see this diagram, it describes about the framework architecture. So it has various components. Okay, we will see one by one. If you see the first one, common language runtime, we'll call it as a common language runtime, CLR. So as part of interview, this slide is very important, irrespective of your experience, whether you are a fresher or you have 2 years experience or you are at manager level. So this slide, framework architecture, is very important respective to your interview. So based on your level, the complexity of the questions will be framed. Okay. So CLR, common language runtime. So what common language runtime will do? Common language runtime is the execution environment for your .NET applications. Whatever code you are writing, that will be executed, or the execution process will be taken care by your CLR. And when it's executing the applications, it will handle memory management, like allocating memory and deallocating memory, and allocating resources and deallocating resources. So that's why you no need to write destructors in .NET. Earlier in C++, we have to write destructors explicitly. So here the memory allocation and deallocation will be taken care by your CLR. And this is the execution process, and a language interoperability has been achieved. So here I am writing same piece of code in C#.NET and VB.NET. So when both the programs are in development mode, both are not equal because there are differences in syntaxes. Okay, because C#.NET syntax and VB.NET syntax will be different. So at development stage, both the programs will be differ. So when I complete the code, I will compile the code. Then C# compiler will take the code and it will generate MSIL. So here in VB.NET compiler will take the code and it will generate the MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language. At this stage, both the MSIL files are equivalent. Then JIT compilers will pick this MSIL code and they will convert the code into machine level language. So as I mentioned, MSIL level, both the languages or both the files will be equivalent, then they can communicate each other. So that's why the piece of code developed in C# that can be used in VB.NET. So here it is. So C# is a Chinese person and VB.NET code is a Japanese person. So this Japanese person doesn't know Chinese and Chinese person doesn't know Japanese. So that's why they cannot communicate each other. So that's why they recruited one interpreter who can convert their statement into English. And this VB.NET or the Japanese person recruited one interpreter who converts this VB.NET code into or Japanese language into English. So that's why they are able to communicate. They are coming to the common point. So in a similar way, C#.NET code and VB.NET code comes to a common point, MSIL, and then they can communicate. So we completed common language runtime, and then we'll go to the Microsoft .NET Framework base class library. So this base class library, predefined classes. Base class library contains predefined classes. Like for SQL connection or connecting to database, we'll have SQL connection, command object. And all these classes have been well organized into namespaces, into different namespaces, so that we can use the namespace when you want those classes. So here examples of some namespaces: system.net, which will contain all internet related classes, and system.mail message, okay, which will contain all internet mail messages, is predefined classes to sending emails. Like we have database classes system.data, and if you see ADO.net, it contains all database related classes and XML classes. SQL connection is a class in system.data.SQL client namespace that can be used to connect to your SQL Server database. Namespace is nothing but it's a grouping of classes. So system.data.SQL client will contains all classes related to SQL Server. So here project templates. If we go back to, so we discussed about .NET Framework base class library and ADO.NET and XML, and the next one is templates. So these are the different types of project templates. When you are working with web services, you will use ASP.NET Web Service template, and Windows, when you are working for Windows applications, you will use Windows Forms, and when you are working with web applications, you will use web forms. So in this layer we have more additions like WCF templates, MVC templates, MVVM templates, etc., etc. And on top of that we have common language specification, CLS. So every language will have its own specification. Even the languages like English has its own alphabet set, and there is a definition for verb, proverb, etc., etc. And also, like if you take Hindi, it has its own alphabet set, definition for verb, proverb, etc., etc. So these are the rules and regulations. You will use these rules and regulations when you construct a statement in that particular language. So like that, every software or every programming language will have its own specification. Specification is nothing but rules and regulations, how to construct the statements. So here in .NET we have more than 32 languages, but all the 32 languages will follow common specification. That means if condition in VB.NET will be same as if condition in C#.NET. So all the programming languages are following same specification. That's why we are able to achieve language interoperability. CTS is nothing but common type system. All the data types, all the object types will be defined in common type system. So again, all the .NET classes will follow same specification. That means integer in VB.NET will be equivalent in integer in C#.NET. Okay. So again, so it is actually on top of CLS we have the languages, programming languages. So it's actually top-down approach. When you develop any program, you will use C# or VB.NET languages, and when you write code or when you define any variables, you will follow CLS, common language specification, and CTS, common type system. Either you will use Windows Forms or web forms, okay, and then when you write the logic, you will use the base class library files. You will use SQL connection, you will use mail message class, etc., etc. And once you done with your development, you will compile the code. So when you compile the code, that code will be given to your CLR. So CLR will call the specific language specific compilers, and it will generate the MSIL, and that MSIL will be given to your JIT compilers, and JIT compilers will given to generate the machine level code, and that machine level code will be given to your OS. So this is all about the .NET demo number 1. So you can reach out to me, or you can send emails to my email ID for any feedback or any specific questions. Thank you very much.